Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. A prominent leader, lawyer, and chief was supposed to appear in a northern BC courtroom yesterday to face sexual offence charges that are alleged to have occurred more than 40 years ago.
But the court appearance for Grand Chief Ed John was postponed. However, some community members did show up at the courthouse. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
On December 10th, former First Nations Summit leader Ed John was scheduled to appear in court in Prince George, northern BC. He is accused of having sexual intercourse with a female without her consent and faces 4 charges for incidents that are alleged to have taken place in 1974. But on the day that John was supposed to appear, the court date was moved to January 15th, 2020, according to BC Prosecution Service. Sherry Hunter, from a neighboring Seika Dene Nation, came to court to provide support for all parties.
It's important for me to be here today because I wanted to support Ed and the victims, and I want to make sure that Ed gets a just trial and the victims are heard.
The alleged incidents involve one person around the Prince George area. Edna Agla from Takla Lake First Nation felt it was important to be here.
We want to see how things go because a person who has helped our nation, and we all pray for this person because he's a person going to court for sexual abuse.
Ed John completed 11 consecutive terms as a leader with First Nations Summit. He is a lawyer and hereditary chief from Tlasden Nation, located on Stewart Lake. Both Agla and Hunter felt a blow to see a prominent community leader face allegations.
Think, wow, you know, they could do anything, and and he has done many things for our community. So for something like this to happen, it's just it's very sad. It's almost like a death. You're grieving for what's going on.
January 15th, 2020 is the new arraignment hearing. Hunter plans to attend.
And January 15th, I do believe there's the next case. So just to be here and support of everyone and hope for a good outcome, like a positive outcome.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Prince George, British Columbia.
NDP critic for Indigenous youth, Charlie Angus, held an eagle feather in the House today and asked the Prime Minister to stop fighting Indigenous kids in court. Angus was referring to the government challenging the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal's decision to compensate First Nations children and families harmed by the on-reserve child welfare system.
For 7 months, the body of 16-year-old Devin Freeman hung on a tree 35 meters from the group home where he disappeared, and nobody found him. What a sad symbol for this nation. First Nation families are losing their children all the time to what the Human Rights Tribunal has ruled the willful and reckless discrimination and systemic underfunding by this government. So to this Prime Minister, stop with the honey-dripped words and call off the lawyers. Will he commit to meet with Cindy Blackstock to ensure that the Human Rights Tribunal ruling is respected so that no more children die on his watch or our watch?
There is growing pressure on the federal government to extend a deadline for 60 Scoop survivors to get their share of a multi-million-dollar settlement. Advocacy groups have been lobbying the government to extend the end-of-year deadline. Today, during question period, NDP MP Leah Gazan asked the Prime Minister if he would do that.
Mr. Speaker, without stalling payments for those who've applied, will the Prime Minister extend the application date? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the 60s scoop represents a dark and painful chapter in our history. The court-approved settlement agreement process has begun to compensate survivors. The settlement includes a $50 million foundation for healing, commemoration, education, language and culture. But we know there are other claims left unresolved, so we're working to address harm suffered by other Indigenous children as a result of the 60s scoop.
As you just heard, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau didn't really answer the question in the House, but APTN News is trying to get answers from the government. For more on this story, you can go to aptnnews.ca, where you'll find more on the settlement and looming deadline.
The new North American Free Trade Agreement between Canada, the United States and Mexico was signed on Tuesday. NAFTA was finalized by all 3 countries last year, but stalled when the U.S. refused to ratify it. New additions to dispute settlements, Mexican labor conditions, and environmental obligations had all three parties agreeing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau vows to have Parliament ratify the agreement as soon as possible. The Assembly of First Nations says the agreement protects Indigenous rights and will benefit First Nation businesses. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he will not support the deal until he's read it, but he is encouraged by what he's hearing about the deal's impact on First Nations people.
Well, I respect the opinion of Indigenous leaders when they make comments about the impact of legislation or agreements, and so I'll take that into consideration. I want to take a look at the details of this agreement to see if that is, in fact, the case. If there are certainly protections in place for Indigenous communities, that to me is important. So I want to make sure I take a look to confirm that. And that's going to be something that should be an element of any of our trade agreements, that we look at the impact to Canadians, to workers, and to Indigenous communities. So that's important, and we'll take a look at that when we make our analysis and evaluation of the details of the agreement.
A man is fighting back against several shopping instances gone bad. He claims he was racially profiled while shopping at a Winnipeg grocery store. Now he's taking his case to the Human Rights Commission. Brittany Hobson reports.
It's been a frustrating 2 weeks for Chris Westcoop. The Aboriginal man has had to find a new place to shop after he says he was accused of theft at a Winnipeg superstore on December 1st. Westcoop says he was talking to a police officer when a second one told him to leave.
Another officer approached us and basically said to me that I had to leave, as the manager of the store identified me as somebody that was stealing before. As I've never stolen anything ever, I found it funny. And then he was actually serious, which I was taken back a bit.
Westcoop says he asked to speak with a manager, but was denied. He went back to the store later that day, hoping to resolve the issue, but was told if he came back, he would be arrested. Despite this, he went back 6 days later, and the same officer told him to leave again. Westcoop says he felt humiliated.
So why me? Why now? After all these years? Why confront me this way? You could have just asked me to step aside, away from the front of the store, and talk to me.
He filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission saying he was racially profiled.
To be removed from a store for no other reason than looking the way I do, it's basically profiling, and it's very stupid.
However, Winnipeg police say it wasn't profiling, and the issue has been resolved.
It had nothing to do with this person's race. It was somebody pointing out that this person had been barred from the store before. So mistaken identity, yes. Anything beyond that, no.
Tomi Sojourno Campbell specializes in diversity and inclusion training. She says these instances have a lasting effect on people.
The psychological impact is that people are experiencing high levels of stress, fear of security guards, fear of the actual location itself, fear of law enforcement, in this context, police.
Sojourno Campbell adds companies also have to be held accountable.
But they have a corporate responsibility, to be socially responsible to the communities that they are a part of, to listen to the communities that community members and individuals that go into those retail locations to make purchases.
In an email to APTN, a spokesperson for the store said, "All of our colleagues are required to complete training to ensure that everyone, colleague and customer, is treated with the respect and dignity they deserve." For Westcoop, he plans to take his business elsewhere. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
After hundreds of years, a store has announced it's no longer buying fur.
That's coming up after the break, but first here's a look at Thursday's weather.
Starting on the East Coast, -3 with snow for Halifax, -5 in snow for St. John's. 17 below under sunny skies for Nain, -10 for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, -2 and sunny for Montreal, 14 below and snow for Chibougamau, -5 with snow in Toronto, 4 below and snow for Ottawa. Sunny skies and 18 below for Thunder Bay, 19 below for Sioux Lookout. Minus 28 in Pockettawagan, sunny and 26 below for Thompson. Minus 20 in Winnipeg, Gimli and Barons River. Minus 15 with snow for Saskatoon, 14 below and snow in Regina. Minus 31 in Uranium City, 30 below in Stony Rapids.
Welcome back. A company with historic ties to the North has announced that they will no longer be buying fur. The Northwest Company has been buying fur since 1668 when they were part of the Hudson's Bay Company. In 1987, the Northwest Company was split off from the HBC and they kept buying fur. Fur prices have dropped between 50 and 70% in recent years, and as a result, the Northwest Company is suspending the purchase of any new fur for the foreseeable future. While Nunavut and the Northwest Territories have extensive hunter and trapper support programs from government, the people who could lose the most are trappers in the remote parts of those provinces where Northwest Company stores can often be the only ones in town.
A number of First Nations in northern Alberta say they are fighting to protect their land after hearing about a plan to use treaty land for agriculture. As Tamara Pimentel reports, chiefs of the North Peace Council say they were not consulted.
For the Beaver First Nation, this is a sacred area, located 2 hours south of the Northwest Territories' Alberta border. It's where elders like Henry Francis come to pass knowledge of culture and hunting down to youth.
Our surrounding communities also come here and join us every summer in our cultural camp, and it's something we look forward to every year. And if it's not here next year, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go?
The community fears that all of this will be turned into farmland. On November 12th, the nearby Mackenzie County sent a letter to the province of Alberta proposing to purchase 350,000 acres of land, stating there is a local desire for an increase in agriculture lands and grazing reserves. Beaver First Nation Chief Trevor Mercurdy says he, along with other First Nations that would be affected by the sale, were not consulted before the letter was sent out.
The letter came to us from a private individual that didn't want to be named.
Maps of the proposed farmland shows it cuts into Treaty 8 First Nations land. Mercurdy took APTN on a tour of the area.
When we have these projects and proposals that are being proposed by the governments, we are the last to hear about it, and the plans are already made. It's hard for us to come to a consensus when everything's said and done.
So the Beaver First Nation sent a rejection letter to the provincial government, stating this proposal from Mackenzie County is a further effort to remove us from our lands. This isn't the first time these sacred lands have been threatened. The aftermath of a massive wildfire in spring of 2019 still smolders along these roads that were built to fight the flames. Councillor Clarence Formier says the culture camp that usually takes place here was cancelled this past summer.
We'd like to keep it for traditional land, and there's a number of us that hunt in this area and all the way to Old Stony Lake, and right now that place is all burnt up and it's just devastating.
We were very concerned about the amount of land that they're asking for. We are in the middle of another land transfer. We've managed to hold up 30,000 acres from the last Mackenzie land transfer, which was approved in, I believe, 2010. What we've seen from those land sales is catastrophic for us as First Nations people.
The Alberta Wilderness Association have released a statement showing support of the First Nations involved. Nissa Peterson says there needs to be an inclusive process for the sale of public lands in Alberta.
We are certainly concerned about the fact that local Indigenous communities were not consulted or notified. They're important for habitat for species at risk. There's quite a few woodland caribou ranges within that area.
APTN reached out to the Mackenzie County and the province of Alberta. Neither have responded to our request for comment before airtime. Mercurdy says the Beaver First Nation is continuing to work with surrounding First Nations communities to fight the land sale. He says more cabins like this will be built.
It's heartbreaking. The future generations won't have a place, to come enjoy themselves in the summer, to learn the things that we lived by, the medicines that we pick around here, and just the happy cookouts. And I can't think of losing this country to farming. It's be bad for everybody.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News on the Beaver First Nation.
The Manitoba government was handed a report over a year ago containing ways to dramatically overhaul the province's embattled child welfare system. Two of the report authors told APTN In Focus today they're frustrated with the lack of progress.
Well, yeah, we certainly have a heartbreaking history of the well-intentioned stranger at the door, removing children, splitting them up, separating them, putting them in stranger care. Sadly, that's happening at a faster rate than ever here in Manitoba today. One of the themes in there is just this longing for some type of accountability or some independence. They talk about a warrant or some type of a judicial review. Mm-hmm. There are steps in place that a judge the agency has to go before a judge within 4 juridical days, whatever that means.
People are currently being employed by the child welfare industry in this province. And would we as a province and as families be better served if those workers maybe weren't part of the child welfare system, but maybe instead were part of a community response system?
Right.
Something we do at Fearless RTW as much as we can is we respond immediately to families when child welfare becomes involved, and we work with those families to document and create evidence of their good parenting, because we know that a lot of people, when they're raising their kids, aren't taking snapshots and documenting things along the way. Yeah. But unfortunately, the reality of today is that that's what we have to tell parents, that we need you to get as much paperwork as you can, as much certificates as you can, as much programs completed as you can, whatever evidence, letters of support, anything that we can do to ensure that parents can prove and demonstrate that they know that their children need food and beds and safe places to be and recreation activity. Like, parents have to be able to provide one piece of paper for every element of life and care for these children.
That episode of In Focus is on our website, aptnnews.ca. Time for us to take another break.
But there's still more ahead, and here's the rest of tomorrow's weather forecast. Picking back up in northern Alberta, minus 28 for Fort Chipewyan, 25 below in Fort McMurray. Minus 2 with snow for Medicine Hat, plus 3 in Lethbridge. Plus 8 with showers for Vancouver, Tofino, and Campbell River. Minus 7 in Dease Lake with snow, plus 6 with rain for Prince Rupert. 29 below under sunny skies for Old Crow. Minus 4 with a rain-snow mix in Whitehorse. Minus 31 in Wrigley and Yellowknife. 34 below in Fort Simpson. Minus 20 in Sax Harbor. 28 below for Colville Lake. 26 below for Baker Lake, Whale Cove, and Arviette. Minus 20 in Resolute. 22 below in Igloolik. Welcome back. It's that time of year where holiday celebrations are taking place across the north and everywhere else. But for those who cannot go home because of travel costs, there is an extra effort in the Northwest Territories to stay merry and bright. Our reporter Charlotte Moore Jacobs has this festive story.
It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes and bags. Then the APTN reporter thought something they hadn't before. What if Christmas comes from the people who walk through that door? Once a year, spreading cheer is the Yellowknife Moot Inuit Tagut Tagat to eat. Way up in Kuluktuk, Nunavut, Colin Ivaluk is from. But celebrating with grandkids here makes him anything but glum.
When's the last time you spent Christmas in Kuluktuk?
1995. That's a long time. Wow. I'm feeling emotional right now. Oh, sorry. I'm going to boil it at home.
What are you going to do?
Boil it. That's a delicacy.
That's the best.
Then the people, young and old, will sit down and feast on char, muktuk, and all the great treats.
I really like Eskimo ice cream, so that'd be great to have.
I don't even know what that is.
It's just like meat and like fat mixed together, and I don't know how to make it, so that's why I love it so much. And
last year, Madeline Nakamayak spent $2,400 on airfare. With fond memories of holidays in Paulatuk, now in Yellowknife, she's happy to share.
Well, every year, my daughter, he would build an igloo for everybody. We would have the igloo, we put Christmas lights on it, and so there was this one Christmas that there was my sister and my other two cousins. We cried to sleep in the igloo, but like, you know, it was cold out, whatever. Our parents were saying, no, you can't. But then, so my grandparents let us sleep in the igloo. So about five minutes into sleeping in the igloo, we were all crying to go back in the house.
There's as many young ones as a jamboree, and a good time to be had, even when they get sleepy. This grandbaby will spend her first Christmas with her ananas far away in Arctic Bay. Deborah Klinkenberg, creator of Festivities, now watches the activities.
Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was feeling rather homesick, and of course, seeing all the people's posts about games and things like that happening back home, I was feeling homesick. I just kind of threw it out there, knowing that there's other people that can't get back home. Like, how about if we have a little get-together, play some games, sing some songs, and have a potluck dinner.
Even if you can't go home this holiday season, a message from Talyok Nunavut brings good reason.
You know, everybody gets together and you can feel the love for each other.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Cute baby overload on that story. An update now on who will be appearing on a special edition of Time magazine. Her name is synonymous with climate change. Swedish teen activist Greta Thunberg is Time magazine's Person of the Year.
I'd like to tell my grandchildren that we did everything we could.
We are the ones who are going to bring change.
Thunberg is the youngest ever to receive this annual honor. She began a global movement by skipping school last year, protesting outside the Swedish parliament, and inspiring 4 million people to join the global climate strike last September. Thunberg is currently in Madrid at the COP25 climate talks.
And congrats to her.
Yeah, that's, I don't think anybody's overly surprised. She was made a lot of headlines this year.
Indeed she did.
Yeah.
Well, that's your APTN National News for tonight. If you missed anything, you can catch up on our website, aptnnews.ca.
And if you missed today's In Focus on the child welfare system, you can find it on that website too, or you can tune in at 11 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning for an encore performance. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
My Uncle Leonard.
So this is my dad right here?